Before I introduce myself, I do want to thank the voices of our city choir and their choir director. Their choir director, John Brady. They were founded in 2016, and they are a choir that gives voice to San Diego's homeless community. And I recommend you take a look at page 17 on your program, because it gives a better and more detailed description. But thank you very much. That was wonderful. So, hello and welcome to Politifest here at the University of San Diego. My name is Noelle Norton, and I am Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at USD. But I'm not only Dean here at USD, I'm also a member of the Political Science and International Relations faculty. I have been a Political Science and International Relations faculty member here at USD since 1994. Before I became Dean, I used to teach classes in urban politics, Congress, women in politics, and on interest groups. These are topics that are near and dear to my heart. I just wish I had a classroom this month to deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with today. So, but let's talk about, the University of San Diego is very grateful to host Politifest on our campus. It is a goal of our students and members of our campus community, our community of scholars here at USD, to be politically active. And we define political activity in all ways, from voting to putting a placard on your front door, to campaigning, to protesting. So it is our goal for students to understand the whole gamut of how to be political. So Politifest gives us the opportunity to bring the leaders and the groups from the outside community onto our campus to engage with our students and faculty. And we find that to be critically important for our students and for our faculty to think about the greater San Diego region and how politics has consequences. So at USD, it is our goal to, at the core of our mission, to develop thoughtful citizens who are willing to participate in governmental processes. We're committed to the democratic process. We're committed to issues such as gun control and immigration. We are committed to issues that affect us in one way or another. And we want to keep all conversations going. So again, I want to thank the Voice of San Diego for bringing this important event to our campus for the first time. And I also want to acknowledge the USD organizations that have contributed and participated in this entire enterprise. The College of Arts and Sciences, the Department of Political Science and International Relations, the Department of Communication Studies, the Department of the Changemaker Hub, the Humanities Center, and the Center for Ethics, Economics, and Public Policy. So we have a lot of campus partners working with the community here today. So with us here today and moderating the first Politifest session is Scott Lewis. I see him standing there. He is the CEO and Editor-in-Chief of the Voice of San Diego. Scott oversees all operations for the news organization, and he has created partnerships and products that have earned the nonprofit both national and international recognition. He's also a regular on local television and radio, hosting the Friday 5 on NBC 7 San Diego, and a weekly podcast and radio show on AM 600 KOGO. Scott graduated from the University of Utah, and he now lives in Ocean Beach with his wife and his 2 children. So please help me welcome Scott Lewis.
We doing this? All right, Politifest 2018, welcome. So, I remember 7 years ago, the first Politifest, I said, welcome to the first annual Politifest, and somebody in the crowd said, it's inaugural, not first annual. There's no such thing as first annual, so. But now we're several years in, and it's growing. We have a record attendance plan and a record amount of sessions, and I can't thank everybody enough for coming and for being a part of this. Thank you to the Dean and University of San Diego. And can we hear it for the choir again? Wasn't that fantastic? You should stay after. They're going to sing a couple more songs after this panel discussion is over. I was really pleased that they could do this, and I think they're doing something special in the community, and their voice should be part of the voices of this entire session and this entire day. All right, so we have with us today 3 different types of mayors. It turns out that being mayor for different cities entails a very different job. And on the other hand, they're dealing with a lot of the same problems. One of the people here today is San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer. Welcome, Mayor Faulconer. Faulconer is the chief executive of the city of San Diego, meaning he and his managers oversee almost all city employees. He's a former city councilman as well. But not all mayors are the chief executives of their city. Some have to lead in a different form. Take Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg. Welcome, Mayor Steinberg. Mayor Steinberg operates in a city manager form of government. Look, we get right into the wonky stuff. We don't mess around with symbolism stuff. Right into the wonk. He is, in essence, the leader of the city council, but his influence comes mostly from his ability to lead. He has some experience doing that. From 2006 to 2014, he was the president of the state senate. Welcome, Mr. Mayor Steinberg.
Thank you.
Now, I don't know about you, but I feel very fortunate to live so close to a very different and vibrant country called Mexico. Latin America played a big part in my education, and being able to visit it changed my life forever. But now there's a new tension, there's a new dynamic between our countries. And a president on this side who wants to build a wall and so that we can hardly see the other side. He and Mexico's departing president forged a last-minute trade pact, though, and a new president in Mexico City could make things far more interesting for the two communities. In the middle of it all, just like our other mayors here, is Tijuana Mayor Juan Manuel Gastelum. Welcome, Mayor Gastelum. Mayor Gastelum was a state legislator in Baja California. He actually went to school here, though, at the former Robert E. Lee Elementary School, which is now called Pacific View Leadership Elementary School. Right? A new president, he, unlike previous mayors, he has the chance to get reelected, though, right? We might ask him if he'll try for that. All right, well, let's hear it. Thank you for making the trip, and let's get the conversation started. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Mayor Faulconer. Thanks for coming.
It's good to be here, Scott.
Yeah, you didn't have to travel very far.
I made the journey for you, Scott.
Yes. You do a lot for me. I appreciate it, Mayor Faulconer. So you have an alliance with both Mayor Steinberg and Mayor Gastelum, but it's different. Tell me a little bit about both. What are you trying to do on both sides? What is your relationship with both? They're very different cities.
I agree with the premise of your question. We do have.
You're starting well.
We'll see how it goes. No, and it is for very different reasons. Look, and first and foremost, with Darrell, Mayor Steinberg, we have a unique position, obviously, as mayors, but particularly in the work that we're doing with our Big 11 mayors, trying to be more vocal, particularly at the statewide level, for resources for cities. It's not about partisanship, different parties, obviously, but what is it that we should be doing to get dollars to make changes at that local level, whether it's, I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of these things, infrastructure, homelessness, others. Mayors have a unique perspective. The work that we particularly did this year, and I'm really proud of the partnership that Darrell and I have developed. When we went up to the state legislature and said we need some dollars for homelessness for the first time ever, directly to cities. We were successful at that. We're going to make that continue on, obviously. So a great partnership.
Great.
And my friend and colleague Juan Manuel Gastelum, we do spend a lot of time together for all of the right reasons. We've been very vocal, as I think many of you know here, particularly over the last 2 years, building our relationship between our two cities, but with a particular focus on our economies, not two cities, but one region, and the strength of that region. Our proximity to Tijuana and Mexico is a strength. It's a competitive advantage. It is one that we promote and grow. And our particular focus over the last year and a half or so has really been on free trade and ensuring that free trade continues. Free trade works. It's benefiting. We're creating good quality jobs on both sides of the border. So we've been very vocal on that. We felt so strongly about it that we restarted the Border Mayors Association. Juan Manuel and I co-chair that organization. We were just in San Antonio. We have mayors on both sides of the border. We had 29 mayors that believe like we do about how important that relationship is, but also sharing our story of success at the local level. That's what mayors can do. Because when you're talking, as you just said, about Mexico City or Washington, D.C., it's far away from the border region. So it's up to us as mayors, Juan Manuel feels the same as I do, to talk about local issues, show how that relationship is a success, and that's why not only have we spent that much time, but particularly as this winds through the United States Congress, being very vocal on the national and international level to keep that relationship going.
Well, let's talk about that. So just 2 days ago, Mayor Faulconer and you, Mayor Gastelum, you signed a city collaborative agreement. It was there was also a series of resolutions that several of your counterparts signed on to. But what's the point? What are we trying to achieve?
What's the point?
What's the point? What is this? Feels a lot of like there's a lot of means. What is the end?
Well, first of all, thank you. Good morning to you all. It's great to be here today, and most of all because, well, thank you for inviting us. Thank you for having us here, Voice of San Diego and University of San Diego. And well, it's greetings to my colleagues, Darrell Steinberg, and of course my friend Mayor Kevin Faulconer. And what is the point of what we're doing? First of all, doing things good, doing things right. We have a mega region. We have to talk about it. We have to work together. We have to build bridges to increase the economy of our region for our people, so there will be more jobs. And if people see the first authorities or the municipal authorities together, it kind of boosts up everything. So we can communicate, we can do things, we can work together. For instance, in Tijuana, for each 2 jobs that are created, one is created in San Diego. We as Mayor Kevin Faulconer says, and I'm following through his words, is we breathe the same air. We have the same sea in front of us, or ocean, and we have families, we have relatives, we go back and forth. For instance, in Tijuana, there's 50 million people yearly crossing the border every day. Amazing. And then what do we have to do? What's the point? It's doing things, the economical wheel goes around and around and around. We have to facilitate things. We have to facilitate what can be done. That's what our main objective. Work together. Someone over in San Antonio said that Tijuana, San Diego, the mega region, Cali Baja region, it's kind of a Romeo and Juliet. We're together. Who knows who's Juliet or who's Romeo? But
That didn't end well, I'm going to say. That didn't end very well.
While it lasted, it was great. And we're going to make it last forever, if it's possible. God's willing, obviously. But we're working. That's the main point. Create.
So did it get enhanced with what happened with the 2016 election with President Trump's rhetoric. Are you in a sort of defensive mode? And either of you can answer that. Or would you have tried to pursue this anyway?
You know, I think it is more incumbent upon us, Scott, as mayors, to tell that story of success. Because this border region does work well together. We are concentrating on building bridges, literally and figuratively. And with the help of our congressional delegation, again, we have strong bipartisan support. We look at the investments on both sides of the border. We just opened the pedestrian east facility. That's incredibly important. Pedestrian west, obviously cross-border express, so you can park your car, walk right into Rodriguezville. We were just in Washington advocating for a new border crossing, Type 2, that's going to be the most technological. Again, how do we help goods and services flow? And so I think it's been more important, Scott, more important than ever, for us to be very vocal, and particularly not just here in the region, but in Washington, D.C. and in Mexico City. That's why we travel to both capitals together, why I love doing all of the national media that we do, and I just did some national Mexican media in Washington, to promote how important this is. We have right in our region, we have 118,000 jobs that are dependent upon free trade, several billion in supply chains. People have a choice to locate and grow their research and development and their manufacturing. I want them to choose our region every single time. And those regions that figure that out, that work well together, are going to be successful. Those that don't are going to be left behind. And so that partnership that we've established, and then I really enjoy growing, makes economic sense, it makes cultural sense, and we're doing it for all the right reasons.
I'm sorry, Scott, if we don't talk about the good things that happen here in this mega region, who's going to tell about us? No one. So we have to talk about the good things that are happening. For instance, in this, with Kevin signing an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, so we can work together. Our main offices work together. And we have to tell Washington, we have to tell Mexico City, it's happening, it's working, and we can go through with it.
So, Sarah. Mayor Steinberg, you were recently here. You toured some of the homeless shelters that we've put up, some of the bridge shelters. And you reflected that those were a good idea that you learned from, you might take back. What are you taking from San Diego? What do you learn from your counterpart here, and what are you teaching him?
Well, I have much to teach here, but no, more to. First of all, thank you for having me as well. A pleasure to be here. And then, all joking aside, I come down here to participate and hopefully to add to the conversation, but just listening to the first few minutes of this conversation, I learned a lot as well. And it reinforces my own belief about the importance of the mega region, as you describe it, and the importance of Mexico and the United States working closely together, the importance of free trade, the importance of always being the antidote to the demagoguery that exists in many parts of the country and out of Washington, D.C. when it comes to immigration and a whole host of other issues. Is actually very reaffirming to me. And so I've been to San Diego a couple of times, and I appreciate Mayor Faulconer's kind words. I agree, we're partners here, and we have very common challenges. I went from this policy-making role as president of the Senate and member of the legislature for 14 years to being the mayor, and people always ask me, well, what's the difference? Well, being president of the Senate is arguably a more powerful job than being mayor of Sacramento, but being mayor is a much more public role, and it's much more boots on the ground, solve the problem in front of you, build a city. It is much more direct and visceral of a job than being in the legislature. And certainly homelessness is the single biggest quality of life challenge I think we have in our cities in California. And you step back and look at it and you say, how can the wealthiest state in the country with all of our resources, why do we allow this to continue and to grow? When we actually know how to get people off the streets. We know that it is a combination of assertive outreach and triage shelter and permanent housing and case management and mental health services and substance abuse services. And by the way, a big dose and emphasis on prevention and early intervention before people become homeless in the first place. And so, a lot to talk about there. And I have found a kindred spirit here in Mayor Faulconer, you know, different political parties, different backgrounds, but it really doesn't matter because I came down to look at their sprung shelters because we're having a hell of a time in Sacramento finding permanent sites, warehouse space that isn't being overrun by the now legal cannabis industry. We're trying to find space for triage, and this idea of a sprung shelter that is flexible, that is clean, that is every bit as durable as a warehouse, is actually an impressive model. And so I came down to look at it, and I'm taking it back, and we're looking for now vacant land where we can do the same thing to add to our resource base to be able to get, I've committed to getting 2,000 people off the streets by the time of my re-election in Sacramento. So, I know this, you don't set a hard goal, you may not make it, but boy, you'll get a lot closer to making it if you strive, and that's what we're both trying to do here.
Let me ask you about something. When you were in the Senate, you helped get through a lot of money for mental health funding.
Yeah.
And you've actually been successful in getting your county to unleash some of that in your community. How did you do that? And we broke a story here a year and a half ago about some of the funds that are literally sitting there and haven't been unleashed by the county.
So this is a very, here's, let me step back just to digress philosophically for a minute, since I've been in these various roles. The people don't care what level of government solves what problem. They really don't. They just want the problem to be solved. You know, cities have had fights with counties, the cities and the states have had legendary fights about whose money it is, and I always say, you know what? No matter what job I've had, whether president pro tem, senator, mayor, my constituents are the same. And they care about the same things. They care about police and fire service. They also drive the state freeways. They care about homelessness. Many of our people need health care, and so let's stop this us versus them. How are we going to solve the problem together? And it's so true with homelessness. Now, I may be guilty of the original sin here because in writing Proposition 63 in 2004, all the mental health money, 1% tax on $1 million earners, generating, by the way, $2.2 billion a year now. It's helping a lot of people. But we put all the money through the counties. Little did I know that 12 years later I was going to run for mayor of Sacramento. Because what happened is, so I'd become mayor, and I'm facing this huge problem. And I've got to go to my county to get the mental health money. Well, the county, they're fine, but we're a blue city. It's a purple county. They only have 2 representatives out of 5 who represent my city. And they're sitting on a lot of money over there. And so I tried to work with them, and let's just say that they were polite but relatively non-responsive. And so, knowing what I know about the act and having written it and knowing about the reserve money, I pressed them until it finally became a public issue. And it became a little bloody. And we ended up negotiating an agreement where they're going to invest now $44 million of excess Mental Health Services Act resources to invest in our city's whole person care partnership to get these 2,000 people off the streets. And I must say that I sacrificed some relationships, actually, in doing it. I'm not on their Christmas card list. But you have to do it. And this
didn't kill anybody.
I did not kill anyone. No, I just...
Funny, I got a little worried.
No, I just used just figuratively. But this is, Mayor Faulconer and I have talked about this because he faces the same challenge with San Diego County. And what it really means is that we've got to go to the legislature and we've got to do what we did last year, which is to make sure that the cities, big cities especially, are at the center of this debate and that we're receiving some of this money. It's not a control thing. But yes, it is a control thing because we want to control, yeah, I take that back. We want to control the destiny.
It's always a control thing.
That's always a control thing. But we want to control the destiny of our cities and not have to be reliant on somebody else to tell us when and how we're going to get their money.
I'm going to let Mayor Faulconer talk about this, or not let him, I'm going to push him to. But if you have any questions, feel free to text them to 619-202-9051. They're being curated and they'll come up here. I'm not just checking the football scores. But Mayor Faulconer, is the problem Republicans then?
Well, the problem is that we have a county.
It's a joke.
Only in Washington.
Let me answer just like Harold did. They're fine.
They're fine. Republicans, or the county.
The county. But here's the issue. This is one of the reasons why when we both jumped in, and Darrell does have that unique experience writing the legislation, and why we spent so much time in Sacramento is because we're held accountable, but don't have the direct responsibility. Right. So let's change that. I said, Scott, in my State of the City speech some months ago, I said, too often, elected officials, including myself, have sought for universal consensus on homeless issues and don't actually move forward, do anything. The universal consensus that doesn't exist. It's about action. And so that's why we did all the work that we did up in Sacramento in terms of direct dollars now to the cities. But let me tell you, when we talk about homeless and housing, we talk about it in terms of a crisis. To your point, we have a mental health crisis in this state. And we have to make sure that our counties are not just doing the same thing. One of the biggest things, and I've talked to mental health professionals all over the city, particularly in the last 6 months, we need more additional mental health beds, not less as we're losing some from our hospitals. But the number one thing that we need, and this needs to be a focus of our county, is we need mental health housing and the wraparound services that go with it. And we need to push very hard as mayors to make sure that we're saying we have sites, we have locations, but we need that partnership. In our bridge shelters, one of the things that we've seen, and Darrell and I have talked about this, approximately 50% of the folks that are in our bridge shelters have either self-diagnosed mental health or substance abuse issues. We have to not just do the same thing. It requires different action. It requires not waiting for universal consensus. That's why we're spending so much time on this as mayors, but particularly Mayor Steinberg and myself, to send a very strong bipartisan message. Let's change the way we are doing things. Doing the same thing before is not making a difference in people's lives and on the streets.
A very brief, shameless political plug here. Proposition 2 on the November ballot in 4 weeks is crucial to help solve this problem. I came up with this idea of taking a small portion of this Prop 63 money, setting aside as a repayment fund, and issuing a $2 billion housing bond for the homeless mentally ill. That's on the November ballot. We passed this. We're going to have $2 billion of additional investment. And by the way, that $2 billion, the way housing finance works, is leveraged to be about $20 billion. We can make a dramatic impact on building this housing that Mayor Faulconer talks about by passing Proposition 2 4 weeks from Tuesday.
Do you support Prop 2? Mayor Gastelum,
I have a lot of U.S. citizens in Tijuana. Can I help you out?
Yeah. You, Mayor Gastelum, you're dealing with a different, you have a homeless population as well, but you're dealing with also another problem. As our country deals with its policies towards asylum seekers, there's a tremendous number of them that still try to come through what is the busiest border in the world. And they're getting stopped there. And a lot of them are staying in Tijuana, sometimes for quite some time. And there's been some criticism about how the local authorities are interacting with them. What do you say to folks who are worried about them? What do you say to them? And how's this all going to work out?
Well, as recently as you know, we had approximately 18,000 Haitians in
18,000 Haitians.
18,000, yes, in about 2 or 3 months. All of a sudden, we had 18,000 people in our town. Well, not very good things sometimes bring good things. The hotels were full. The grocery stores sold everything. The houses with their those bed and bath places, they were full. Where I'm getting is this. In Mexico, the federal policy is that we are free to travel around our country, obviously subject to certain requirements, which once they're satisfied, you can walk away and do what you, on your own, do what you have to do. Now, we did approach that problem because all of a sudden 18,000 people just coming in. And although I said there are good things, well, there's another thing we have to acknowledge. Tijuana is a very young town. We're only 129 years old. So we're young. And Tijuana is made or has been growing up, we're a migrant city. There are few people which we were born in Tijuana. I'm a Tijuana born. My dad, my mom, they were born in Tijuana. But still, more than 50% of our inhabitants they're out of town, we can say that. And it's not a matter of knowing how to deal with the problem, but there's a lot of feeling from our people to when someone else comes from out of town and needs help, they go out and visit them. So we had a lot of houses where they took him in, a lot of Christian houses, apostolical or religion houses who took him in. And well, that's how we're dealing. Finally, all of them, almost everyone crossed the border. They were seeking asylum from Haiti. And finally, around 3,000 are still living in Tijuana. But there's one thing I should say, and I recognize. We haven't had any trouble or problems with them, although they kind of live together, but there's no problem of drinking, loud music, or doing bad things in the streets. They're working people. And there's one issue that we can deal and we can cope with. As long as you come in and work, do yourself good, do your family and do your neighbors good, well, you're welcome. That's how that's the way we deal with those type of problems. They're not good to happen. It's not a great thing that happens, but it does happen, and if you know it happens, well, you have to just come up in front of it and do your best.
One of the things you are also dealing with is an unprecedented level of violence, of murders and such. What would you hope people here understood about what you're doing about that, what causes it, and just what people are facing there and how it's being resolved?
Well, first of all, if you go anywhere, any place in the world, worldwide, and if you go and looking for trouble, you'll find trouble. If you go and visit a place and you look for the tourist places, look at good behavior, you won't have any trouble. We do have a problem. Yes, we do. We recognize it. We have a gun trouble. I mean, in the United States, the idiosyncrasy, it's different about having a gun in your house, at home, or carrying a gun. In Mexico, it works different. In Mexico, it kind of makes you the macho type. I got a gun. So what? I mean, but it's not working the way it should work. What we're doing is we're trying to, with the federal government, try to provoke to the change the law to whoever is carrying a gun, he goes in jail without bail. And
yeah, right now there's an interesting situation where you can't keep people in jail as much as you used to, right?
Well, they can go out of bail, and it's kind of a round thing. You go in, you do get yourself in trouble. You do have to be accountable a bit, but you can be in having your freedom. And we're fighting so that can go back, say, you're having a gun, you can't come out just like that. It does cause us problem, yes, but still, we are a growing town. we our economic development is reaching peaks higher than ever. For instance, maybe one of you owns a Toyota Tacoma. Okay, so.
I love my Tacoma, yes.
Okay, well, the one that.
What did you think, Mayor Steinberg? It was pretty good.
Oh, it's great drive. It was wonderful, easy. Smooth.
For instance, that double cab or twin cab, it's made in Tijuana.
Fantastic.
It's made in Tijuana. And for instance, the prime wheel rims, they're made in Tijuana. For every 2 jobs created in Tijuana, there's one created in San Diego.
When we replaced NAFTA with USMCA, thanks, means a lot. Will they still be able to build Tacomas in Tijuana?
Yes. One thing came out great. Mayor Kevin Faulconer and myself, we've been promoting, what's the right word, Kevin? We're promoting the good things that happen in Tijuana, San Diego region. We need that trade to keep up. We do have to read it and understand it on the bottom lines, the real thin words or
The small print?
Small, yes, but still, we think it's going to work. It's a must. And we can push it together, we can work together and come out great as we have been doing it for this past 10 years, 12 years.
Thank you. Mayor Steinberg, with those tent shelters that we're dealing with here, the bridge, they were supposed to be a bridge to a permanent solution. There has been some, I think you would acknowledge, some disappointing results from how many people graduate from those facilities into permanent housing. And I don't know that anybody necessarily deserves specific blame for that, but it's a very difficult thing to find permanent housing. And have you figured out or have any perspective on how our communities are going to accept and facilitate the construction of more permanent housing? What's the situation? Is it easier in Sacramento because there's nothing there? Or
Wow. I'm so glad I traveled to San Diego today. It's fabulous.
Sacramento is a beautiful city, thriving, economic development. You're welcome.
Yes, we're a prairie town. There's a lot of stagecoaches, actually.
Pull yourself together, Mayor. It's okay.
It's okay. Let me answer your question, and just all kidding aside. Sacramento, by the way, is a growing, booming city. Tech, innovation, food. The food scene is incredible. Art and culture. It is the next great American city. I'm just telling you that. However, now that I have defended the honor of my city, let me answer the question. This housing, the housing crisis is so real, and there is not one cause, but I do think with a new gubernatorial administration, a recognition that this is the crisis that it is, the partnership with local governments, there are several things we must focus on. One is funding, there's no question, and more innovative sources of funding. It's too expensive. It's $300,000 to $400,000 of subsidy per affordable unit in Sacramento. We need more money, but we also need to find ways to bring the cost down. Secondly, we on my side of the aisle cannot ignore the need for regulatory reform, music to Kevin's ears. I tried to take on the issue of CEQA reform when I was in the legislature and made some modest gains and improvements here. But ultimately, there needs to be a big deal between the environmental community, organized labor, the business community that essentially says the following. We are going to make it easier to build the kind of projects we say we need more of and want more of. Infill housing that's good for the environment, affordable housing, especially for people with special needs like the homeless. And we're going to pay working people who build the housing a real wage. That's the deal to be made here in California on on regulatory reform. And third, you cannot understate this issue of NIMBYism. And Scott Wiener had a very interesting bill out of San Francisco, the Buy Right Housing Bill in 2017.
827, right?
827. That is the kernel of a bigger idea, because now that I'm a mayor, I'm supposed to be all for local control. Well, let me tell you something. You cannot understate this issue of NIMBYism. And Scott Wiener had a very interesting bill out of San Francisco, the Buy Right Housing Bill in 2017.
827, right?
827. Decade housing, present mayors accepted here, not being willing to fight to locate affordable housing so that people have a place to live. There's a room for the state to say this must be built without overriding objections, because we need more siting and more housing.
Let me ask you, Mayor Steinberg, is rent control one of the tools you need?
So I have proposed in my city temporary rent caps, 3-year rent caps, and only for units that are 20 years or older, because that's correlated to where more of our middle to low income people rent. 50% of our low to moderate income renters in Sacramento, of 26,200 renters in Sacramento making low to moderate income pay 50% or more of that limited income on rent. We have a real problem. I don't like rent control, but I also think that there is a room for temporary relief until the market attains some equilibrium. I'm not getting very far with my proposal, but it's forcing others to step up and look at other options, like, for example, required long-term leases for tenants who want long-term leases, 18 to 24 months, rent stability and place stability over a longer period of time without calling it rent control. So yes, I think there's a room for some balance here.
So yes on rent control.
I know, I mean, I'm not trying to be a politician here. I'm against permanent rent control. I don't think, because I do think that it will have the unintended consequence of inhibiting growth, which we desperately need, and more supply. I am, however, I believe that until the market attains some equilibrium, that temporary limited caps to protect the people who are most vulnerable, that's appropriate, and that even that is very controversial.
You, I assume, Mayor Faulconer, are against rent control?
That's a correct assumption, Scott.
I've been around for a while.
But for all of the reasons that, and I appreciate what Darrell just said, because we're in the business of providing incentives to actually construct more housing. The unfortunate reality, and you've looked at some of those other cities, it has that dampening effect on actually building more affordable housing that you want. That's why we need to provide the incentives, the community plan work we're doing and others, to actually construct housing.
Okay, so, but your administration just recently lowered the density plans for the corridor that's going up with the new trolley line up to UTC. You know, that seems like a contradictory message. If the answer to rent control is to build more, but then you're also constricting growth in some of these neighborhoods, how are we squaring that?
That had to do with height. One of the things you're talking about the marina, that was about lowering heights, not about restricting density, because we need density. We just passed the Midway Community Plan, as you also know, dramatically increased density. One of the things that we've been pushing very hard on is updating our community plans here in San Diego. We've done 10, I think, since I've been elected mayor. I'm looking at Matt, he's nodding his head. In the 10 years before, you know how many we did in the city? 1. So if we're going to tell people where we want growth and development, and sometimes it's partly where you don't, you have to update those plans and increase that density. So far, on the community plans that we've updated, we've increased the ability for density for about 30 to 35,000 units. And by the time I am done with mayor, my goal would be to increase that to 100,000 units. So San Diegans have the opportunities and our families to buy a place, to rent a place that is actually affordable. And that's why we're spending so much time on the community plan updates.
Mayor Gastelum, there is a new president coming into power in Mexico. He's from a different party than you. Can you help first educate us about the relationship between the federal government and Tijuana? What control does the federal government have over a local jurisdiction like Tijuana?
Oh yes, this coming 1st of December, the new federal government will take place, and we're looking forward to good things to happen. As politicians or people, as Darrell said, we have the same people who vote for, or who to look for to vote. And what we have to do as a municipality or as mayor of Tijuana is be on a generous way to say, here we are, we can work together. It's not a matter of parties, political parties. It's a matter of bringing peace, secureness, good wealth, good health to our people. It's the same people. And we are with doors open. We are willing to work with them. Obviously, we have to. It's a must. It's not a thing that if I want it or not, it has to be. I want the good things for our people. And how it affects the federal government, or how do we work together? Well, mainly basic role, it's money. Because what I've been listening here to Darrell and Kevin is how do we going to spend the money that they'll send us? And how can we work with that? And we can work together. Hopefully, counties in Mexico, could be the states, they kind of get the money and they kind of slowly pour it in the city. But we have to work together to make it faster. And we, first of all, in Mexico works a lot of things, it's emotional. How's that? If a politician, incredibly, it works that way. It's emotions. Do you like him? Oh yes, he's a good guy. Great, we'll work with him. You don't like him? No, he's kind of cranky. He's not a good one. So what do I have to do? Give a big smile. Welcome to our hometown. We're here to serve you, and we can work out everything. As long as it's within the good thing, the well-doing, well-being, just doing good things. And for us politicians in Mexico, we have to do things first, thinking on others before thinking on ourselves. And myself as mayor, what I want to be recognized as someone who tried to do his best. Darrell just said a couple of words very important. It's better to, how do you say it, when you said, let's do it, although if you don't get it.
Set big goals, and even if you don't reach them, you'll get a lot farther by reaching than if you don't.
Quote that, I said that.
So one of the issues that's a particular concern for the southern part of our county is the issue of Tijuana's infrastructure related to sewage. There's long-term dreams about how that can be dealt with. There's also short-term dreams about how that can be dealt with. What is your perspective, and what could you teach us about how that issue can be resolved as it gets more and more worrisome on this side of the border?
First of all, our federal authorities have to get together again, sit down and talk about the problem and see how we can work it, how they can work it out. How come I say they? Because it's not a municipal issue. If that would be a municipal solution, we could find it easily. We can get to the same way as we get together with Kevin, and in this case, we invite Darrell to be with us.
Right.
The federal government has to sit down with the federal government, Mexican federal government, U.S. federal government, and see what we can do. And
Trump and AMLO?
Pardon?
Are Trump and AMLO going to sit down very well together?
We'll give it a try.
Yeah, okay. The summit in Tijuana.
Try to solve that problem, see what our capabilities of doing it, our possibilities, our degrees of going down and doing it. Same on this side of the park, same side of town, and we can work out together. Sometimes the main issue is money. Yes, bottom line, it's money. They have to get together, try to work together. The same way we're doing it at the border. They say when Mexico finished the border infrastructure, the same as the U.S. is doing it right now, the border infrastructure. That's what we need, and we can work at that.
Cool. I'm going to turn to some questions from the audience. This is an interesting one. Sacramento has one of the best urban canopies in California as far as trees. Actually, trees is kind of a big part of the climate action plan. What could you teach us about how Sacramento did that? Is it just because it's easy to plant stuff there? Sorry, I didn't know I was going to go on this track.
Well, with all our mules and tractors, it's been just get out every morning in the dirt, and we've got a long, great tradition of being the city of trees, and it's actually a great source of pride. It's a city of beautiful neighborhoods that has always had a well-developed tree canopy, but we don't just let it be. We are constantly planting, constantly reinvesting, and we've got a warm climate, as you know, being inland, and the tree canopy has been a very just important source of energy conservation, and just adds to the beauty of a magnificent city. And of course, as climate becomes more the rage in the issue, we're trying to convert our ethos around, that developed when we started as the Tree City, to actually develop an industry around alternative fuels, electric vehicles, where we were designated as the green city by Electrify America, $44 million investment in Sacramento. We are going to have hundreds of EV shuttle vehicles on our streets throughout the entire community that you can rent for an hour or two at a time and drop off at wherever you're going, and they'll be picked up by the company. So it's really from trees to electric vehicles to autonomous vehicles, alternative fuels. You asked me a question about trees, and I turned it into an advertisement for my city. So it's all.
Where are you on scooters?
It's all good. Well, the big deal now are jump bikes. We've got the electric jump bikes, and scooters.
I want to know about scooters.
Scooters are coming. Like in Sandy, we don't have scooters yet, but I would say, within a year. And then the question is helmets or no helmets, right?
Yeah.
But we'll have scooters, yes.
One of the reasons I named this panel the Mayors in the Middle isn't necessarily because of your politics in the middle of the spectrum, but honestly how mayors have found themselves in the middle of these giant forces of fiery resistance, liberalism at the Capitol, a fiery situation in the DC politics, and you guys are trying to figure out policies about what your police can do with people that they encounter that are undocumented, or what they should do. There's also a lot of intense pressure on police and criminal justice issues from one side, from the president and people who identify with him, and from people who are concerned about how police have treated their communities. You have had to manage a very tense situation over the last year. I think it's one of your greatest fears to have to deal with something that intense. What did you learn out of the crisis with Stephon Clark?
Well, several things. One is that spending years building the bonds of community is the best antidote to preventing riots in your city when something bad happens. And people talking to each other, working with each other, knowing each other, community-based organizations that are involved, like today, in politics and local issues, because if you can't talk to each other when you're in the midst of a crisis, then bad things will happen. The second thing is that transparency is so underrated, but is so important. The fact that our city went out front when it came, for example, the video release policy of body cams from police officers, and that we didn't try to hold back, but we released video, and we continue to be well before the statutory timeline that is required in our city, helps create that trust. And third is address the underlying issue. Don't be afraid to talk about implied bias. You don't have to refer to each other in negative ways, police officers and community, to recognize that there is a problem there. And that if you're an African American member of our community, you have a very different experience with the police than if you're not. I have 2 kids in their 20s. I never would have taught them to put their hands at the 10-2 position on the steering wheel when pulled over by the police. That's what African American families, no matter what income level or neighborhood they come from, teach their kids. If we don't know that and recognize that, we can't change it. And finally, we have to deal with systemic poverty in our communities. That's really the message for me, is that generations of trauma, generation of hopelessness, generations of poverty are ultimately what must be the focus if we're going to change the lives of people and end these kinds of confrontations. So I'm proud of the city that we didn't riot. And we didn't riot, I think, because we took all of those issues very seriously. And we had built up those bonds of community connection for many years prior to the Stephon Clark shooting. And we're not out of the woods yet, because the DA still has to decide whether to prosecute the officers. And when that decision is made, and she will decide not to prosecute, if I were guessing, right or wrong, we're going to face another round of keeping the peace and trying to make real change.
Assemblywoman Shirley Weber, she's going to be on a panel after this, hosted by Sarah Libby and Raya Rabar. And she put a bill forward that would have made it easier to prosecute police involved in shootings like that. Did you support that? Would you have?
I did, and I would have voted for it. I do think that there was, an effort at the end to try to create a compromise that would have not changed the standard for criminal prosecution, but would have changed the standard around culpability for civil, and that might have been, for civil liability, that might have been a good compromise. But while that bill did not pass, and I thank Assemblymember Weber for pushing so hard, another bill did pass that was very significant, signed by the governor, that no longer allows the investigation results of a police shooting to be kept confidential. I mean, of all the things, before this law changed, Stephon Clark shooting, all the national tension, etc., there would be no way for the public to know the results of the investigation. Now, as a result of the bill signed by the governor, the public will know, and that's the right thing. And it will help us keep the peace, I hope.
Yeah, Faulconer, I'm going to flip it a little bit. We had a reporter, little-known guy, Andy Keats, fine. He's okay. He was following one of the candidates in Logan Heights the other day as they walked through the district. And over again, he told me that he ran into people who said that their biggest concern was police, but not from the perspective of what the police were threatening necessarily, but what they couldn't get from the police. They were worried about the gangs. They were worried about calling the police and not getting a response. One described a situation where a car was being graffitied and tagged for 2 hours before, and there was no police response. The candidates there have talked a lot about police response as a major priority. What would you say to them about, if a car was getting damaged like that in La Jolla, it seems like it would be a giant deal.
Really have made police recruitment, more men and women to join our department, and retention a huge priority for us. We're underneath staffing where we need to be, and I've addressed it head on. And in fact, if you look before last year, we were dramatically lower in pay from where we were not competitive. We were hiring folks and we were losing them to other departments or the sheriff's departments. I think out of 17 agencies, we were like at 15. That's unsustainable. You can't do that. And so I made that a priority. Even some folks on my said, "Oh, we don't want to pay people more," et cetera, et cetera. No, we want to make sure that we have the highest standards, that we attract the best and the brightest and the most diverse police department to serve this community. So raising that, I think, is going to be incredibly helpful. In just a a couple of weeks, we're going to announce a big push, a recruitment push. We're hiring, ladies and gentlemen, by the way. If anybody here wants to be a San Diego police officer or knows somebody that wants to, we want you. And we're going to hire several hundred officers. Directly to your point, where it comes to quality of life, whether it comes to violent crime, whether a variety of things. Yes, we are one of the safest cities in the country, but we need more police officers to get to exactly the types of things that you're talking about. Chief Nislight knows that is my singular focus right now on getting those academies full, making sure we're hitting those response times, and that's why we're putting the resources to back that up.
Just real brief. I'm glad you, Mayor, just said something that made me have one more thought, and that is the ultimate answer to improving relations between police and our communities, especially our communities of color, is to advance community policing. We need that, and that means hiring more officers to allow them to get out of their cars, to know the community, to work together. That's how you build the trust. In Sacramento, we are so short-staffed that the officers don't really know the community and vice versa. And that's what builds the distrust. It's bringing back community policing, which requires a greater investment in police.
Mayor Gastelum, you agree?
Yes, definitely. We have the same problem in Tijuana. We don't have enough policemen. And Tijuana is growing so fast that a young man, a young person can find work anywhere else with better pay than working as a policeman. And we do have a problem. We've been trying to do our best. As Mayor Faulconer said right now, if anyone knows that could work as a policeman in Tijuana, they're welcome. But we do have higher standings on who becomes a policeman. We can't just pick up this guy at the corner. He looks okay, he's great. No, wait. He has to satisfy certain requirements, and that makes it hard. But there's one big issue that we have to appoint here. A man and a woman come to be a man and a woman within the family. In Mexico, we say, your kid, either a girl or boy, if you don't teach him right at home, maybe or probably he will not be a good citizen. And we cannot stand or we cannot expect that our police will do every job that we as citizens, as law-abiding citizens, must do. We have to approach, we have left from our families the good things have to be done. We cannot reprimand our kids because it's bad. We cannot teach them about God because it's bad. We left God out of schools. We left God, I'm sorry to approach this thing, but it's a matter of loving what you do. You have to love your country, you have to love your city, you have to love your folks. It's a matter of more than just policemen, more guns, more rifles, more patrol cars. It's a matter of ourselves trying to do things right. It's within us that we can solve a lot of problems. And this is because we do have a problem with filling up the spaces in Tijuana. We just got 251 more police officials, and we need approximately 700 more. And we have do you know that?
Do you have the money for that?
Pardon?
Do you have the money for that?
Yes. That is paying the wages. We need that. You know, we have police cars without anyone driving them. Why is that? Because there are not enough policemen. And I think it might not be the same here in San Diego or Sacramento, but the main issue is that we do have a problem filling up those spaces for good citizens to be a policeman.
Thank you. I'm going to have to wrap it up. Mayor Steinberg, though, what have you learned about leadership as you transitioned to this? And do you want to be chief executive, strong mayor, when you run for re-election? Maybe throw that on the ballot too.
Well, I don't want to cause a stir back home here, so I should probably say, look, I do think eventually that Sacramento,
So yes.
Sacramento should
Cause
evolve.
the stir.
Sacramento should evolve to a form of executive mayor eventually, whether that's during my term or after. I'll keep that a secret for now. But look, I want to say this: leadership. I think it's an advantage to have the kind of system that Mayor Faulconer is working under, definitely, and I would love it. But leadership is about, no matter what office you serve in, no matter what you do, there are common elements. I consider myself a strong mayor under this system of government, all humility aside here, because it's about persuasion, it's about having a vision, it's about having an agenda, it's about working hard, it's about listening to others, and it's about the one quality of leadership that cannot be substituted for any other is to be persistent and to be dogged and to work towards your goals. You know, this system is designed, all systems are designed with checks and balances. They're designed to, the system's designed to go slow. There are no dictators here, nor should there be. But you succeed when you push and you persist and you have the correct vision. And you can do that and achieve that under any form of city governance. That's what we're trying to do in my city.
Mayor Faulconer, what are you going to be persistent and diligent about over the next 2 years?
Helping Darrell become strong mayor.
I'll take the endorsement, okay.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a broad question. I mean, we do have a lot of similarities on issues that, keeping it with I think the topic here, we are strongest and we are at our best when we work together as mayors. That is one of the things that Darrell and I think why we like each other personally. I like you, Darrell. You're a lot of fun. He's right on some things, I'm right on some things, I get it. But I think this is a time, Scott,
Lots of room up there.
for mayors, for really to be leaders. Cities are the laboratories of change. Cities are where the rubber meets the road. All of the issues that we talk about, back Washington, Mexico City, where it happens or where it doesn't happen is in cities. And so to be able to advocate that, we have some big plans, obviously, to making sure when it comes to housing this year in Sacramento, when it comes to mental health, it's the right thing to do. And so it's up to us to make that case and to state that case. I think we have the leverage and the ability to do that. That's why we've organized some of the other mayors for the first time in a long time. So that is something that I'm going to be particularly focused on. I'm going to give a compliment to my friend and colleague. I think having Darrell as mayor at this time, from where he was in the Senate, is a great opportunity for cities in California. So we're going to push very, very hard on a variety of those topics, infrastructure included, to speak with one voice, to try to, we have enough partisanship in Washington and other places, but to try to speak with one voice on getting results here in cities, that's going to be a big focus of ours.
Well, on behalf of Voice San Diego and the many members who came to Politifest today, thank you so much for coming and speaking. Choir can come back up.